So, last night's edition of Impact Wrestling on AXS TV saw the return of AEW World Champion Kenny Omega to the program after a couple of weeks hiatus. And once again, we saw Kenny Omega alongside Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President Don Callis and the Impact World Tag Team Champions, the Good Brothers, get physical as they attack the Impact World Champion Rich Swann and the Motor City Machine Guns ahead of the big six-man tag team main event at January's Hard to Kill pay-per-view. Now, after a violent confrontation this week on Impact Wrestling, the World Champion Rich Swann, Impact World Champion Rich Swann, will face one half of the Tag Team Champions Kyle Anderson next week in the main event of Impact on AXS TV. This, of course, will come before their big six-man tag team main event at Hard to Kill next Saturday on pay-per-view. Now, during an interview this week on the Impact on AXS TV broadcast, Swann and the Motor City Machine Guns, Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin, mentioned how sick and tired they are of the AEW World Champion Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers, Doc Gallows and Kyle Anderson, coming in and destroying the empire they've helped build in Impact. Mad about their challengers' superiority, they took it upon themselves to confront Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers, who were sitting, of course, in Kenny Omega's tour bus earlier on in the show. It's their Lex Express 2021. When they knocked on Omega's bus door outside in the parking lot, they were jumped by the AEW World Champion and the Impact Tag Team Champions, the Biz Clears. Neither Swann or the Motor City Machine Guns had a fighting chance. Kenny Omega even cracked a joke by saying that his challengers were, quote, easy to kill. Both Swann and Anderson's tag team partners will be banned from ringside during their match next Tuesday on Impact on AXS TV. Now, of course, they'll be banned from ringside because they weren't there when the match was filmed, because this match was filmed as part of that Marathon TV tapings way back when at the end of November. During that period of time, of course, we didn't even know about the AEW and Impact Wrestling crossover that was to come. We didn't know about anything that was to come, and when that match was filmed, I don't even know if the Impact officials were aware. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't, who knows. But ultimately, the reason why Gallows isn't going to be there, the reason why that Kenny Omega isn't going to be there, and the Motor City Machine Guns, I think, were at those tapings, but especially Gallows and Omega, the reason why they're banned from ringside is because when it was taped, they weren't there. So that's why they're banned from ringside, because legitimately they weren't there. As far as it comes to the Hard to Kill main event, in a couple of weeks' time. It's 2 weeks away. It's very, very exciting, isn't it? It's a big match. I mentioned this in a video when I spoke about Tony Khan's appearance on Impact Wrestling on AXS TV last night, that has this feud between Omega and Rich Swann and Don Callis being Kenny Omega's mouthpiece, but also Kenny Omega appearing on Impact Wrestling. Has it lost some momentum? It probably has slightly, to be honest, and that's for a variety of reasons, of course. I think, obviously, as I mentioned previously, they had the 2 episodes of Impact Wrestling on AXS TV, which were the end-of-year best-of specials, and you had the end-of-year awards. It wasn't a traditional episode of Impact on AXS, and it felt like that did slow things down, especially when you go 2 weeks without having any real storyline progression, any new, real, original content. That slowed things down. And then, obviously, in the AEW side of things, a lot has happened over the course of the last few weeks that has just been tragic and heartbreaking and kind of distracted the attention away from that. So Kenny Omega's first appearance on Impact Wrestling, because so much can happen in a couple of weeks in pro wrestling, feels like a lifetime ago. So there certainly is momentum that has been lost, but I do expect it to be built back up. In terms of the segment last night, there was a couple, wasn't there? Previously, before Rich Swann and the Motor City Machine Guns went to confront the former Bullet Club, there was a promo where Kenny Omega was with the Good Brothers and Don Callis on his tour bus. And it was just the typical promo we've seen over the last couple of weeks of Omega and the Good Brothers and Don Callis doing their heel posturing, talking about how they're the best, talking about how they're taking over all of these companies. Kenny Omega with his AEW World Championship. They kind of did a funny joke about they're saying, oh God, look how big it is, look how big it is. And then they were talking about his title belt, obviously, get your mind out of the gutter. Then they started talking about the Good Brothers with their tag team championships. Don Callis even joked, oh, I don't have a championship of my own. And then they had the picture of Don Callis when he was younger with Kenny Omega's uncle as well. So there's lots of stuff that was fun there. And ultimately, when they had the big segment, when they had the attack of the former Bullet Club on Rich Swann and the Motor City Machine Guns, that was fun. That was well done as well. What was very odd is Kenny Omega talking about his nipples during the whole thing. That was certainly very, very odd. Quite humorous there. I think Kenny Omega's definitely flourishing in this heel persona. I think a lot of people would agree that during his run in AEW previously to his big heel turn last year, that really started in the sort of summertime of last year, going back to the cleaner persona, he did kind of feel a little bit handcuffed, I would say. It certainly wasn't the Kenny Omega that we'd seen in New Japan for a while. Certainly wasn't the Kenny Omega, the personality that made him so famous and successful originally in New Japan. And it does feel like he's got this air of freedom as a heel, and especially being in Impact Wrestling, where essentially, look, he can do what he wants. Not only is he best friends with the EVP, but also they're very, very thankful to have him just do these cameo appearances or these longer form appearances in Impact Wrestling. So Omega can do and say whatever the hell he wants during his time in Impact Wrestling, and it goes to show he's got a lot of freedom, and I think he comes across very, very well. He certainly does come across like a big star, whether it's just appearing in the tour bus, whether it's just appearing and not having too much physical altercations with people. We've only seen that happen in the last few weeks. We haven't actually seen Kenny Omega have a match yet. That first one, of course, is going to happen at Hard to Kill. Kenny Omega is coming across like this big, big star, and obviously that's going to help the match at Hard to Kill. There's no doubt about that. As I mentioned, when it comes to being banned from ringside next week, that's obviously because when this match was originally filmed, Gallows wasn't part of that TV tapings because he was away filming a movie at the time. We don't know much more information about that, but he was filming a movie at the time. Kenny Omega certainly wasn't at those TV tapings. He was with Impact Wrestling. He was probably in Jacksonville, Florida, either at the AEW tapings whenever they happened, or just being in Florida, being an AEW EVP as well. So he certainly wasn't there. So that's why they're banned from ringside. I think on the whole, to be honest, credit to Impact Wrestling, because they filmed so much content at the end of November when they did those marathon TV tapings. They filmed so much content, whether it was all of these episodes of Impact Wrestling, whether it was Final Resolution. I don't know if Genesis has been filmed. Considering it's this Saturday, I would say maybe it has been. I don't know. But also, they've essentially filmed everything up to Hard to Kill. I'm just not sure about Genesis. You can let me know in the comment section about that. So I think they've done a good job, my point being, of putting everything together in post-production. They're very good at it because it's what they've been doing for a while, and doing big, long marathon TV tapings and putting all the episodes together and finding a way to do it in chronological order. We know they filmed multiple outcomes, multiple endings. They've put those together relatively well. If you watch the show at certain points, there might be a bad edit here and there that you can tell, okay, that was definitely cut, that was definitely cut, that's been put there, that's been put there. That's kind of par for the course, I suppose, when you've got so much content and you're doing it kind of by the seat of your pants, you know what I mean? And I think on the whole they've done a good job. And with Kenny Omega and Don Callis and the Good Brothers and Rich Swann and Motor City Machine Guns, obviously that segment last night that aired, and all of the Kenny Omega segments, even when they were attacking Rich Swann a couple of weeks ago on Impact Wrestling, they were all filmed in Jacksonville, Florida. They were all filmed several weeks ago. I don't know if this segment that aired last night is the segments that was filmed a couple of weeks ago. PW Insider reported that at the time that Kenny Omega was filming a bunch of new content for Impact Wrestling in Florida a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if this is the same, or if this was some of the content that was filmed originally. I don't know, but it was certainly filmed later than the TV tapings when they were filmed. So again, the timelines of when these things were filmed, it's quite difficult to figure out, but that's not a bad thing. That's a testament to the editing and the way that Impact Wrestling have put together these episodes on Impact. I think they've done a really good job. When it comes to Kenny Omega actually being in the Impact Zone, will we get Kenny Omega appearing inside the Impact Zone on an episode of Impact Wrestling soon? Of course, he's going to be in the Impact Zone for the Hard to Kill pay-per-view. As far as inside the Impact Zone for an episode of Impact, certainly, of course, isn't going to happen until after Hard to Kill, because they're going to tape new content after Hard to Kill for Impact Wrestling and their Impact Plus specials. As far as I've seen, though, the plan isn't really to have him have a match inside of an Impact Wrestling ring on Impact anytime soon. I don't even know if there is plans for him to appear inside the Impact Zone on an episode of Impact Wrestling anytime soon as well. Hence why he filmed all of that content recently in Jacksonville, and for a variety of TV episodes when it comes to Impact. That might be post Hard to Kill as well. So I don't know if we're actually going to see Kenny Omega inside of the Impact Zone, inside of an Impact Wrestling ring on an episode of Impact Wrestling on AXS TV. I'm just not sure if we're going to see that yet. Obviously, time will tell when it comes to that. But as far as I'm aware, we're probably going to just continue to see these backstage segments, outside segments, vignettes on the bus. And obviously, there is a concern when it comes to that of, does it get old quickly? Will it become very samey very quickly? And obviously, the answer is yes. You do need to freshen things up. But for the time being, I suppose, just having Kenny Omega, having the AEW World Champion, having him appear regularly on Impact Wrestling on AXS TV is a big win for Impact Wrestling. He does come across like a massive star, and the ratings, once the ratings come out, we'll do a video. Probably we'll do it tomorrow, I would have thought, since they'll come out today. But we'll do a video about the ratings because when it comes to Impact Wrestling now, previously the ratings, of course, as I've mentioned all the time when I talk about ratings for WWE, AEW, any pro wrestling company, I'll say the same thing, is that the ratings still do matter in 2021, but they tell just a small picture of the whole story. They tell a chapter, if you will, of the whole story, because they don't take into account, streams, illegal streams, watching on social media, watching on YouTube, DVR on demand. They don't take into account any of that, so ratings are important because they're important to the television companies, they're important to the advertisers, but they only tell a small image of the whole picture, if you will. So we'll talk about them when they come out because I think it's interesting to see the effect of the AEW relationship and the effect of Kenny Omega, this whole angle in general, and the build to Hard to Kill, what that will have on the ratings. So we'll talk about that when they come out. But certainly he does need to evolve his appearances, but it doesn't look like they're going to evolve anytime soon. We'll have to wait and see what happens after Hard to Kill. I would assume now as well that the Good Brothers, I guess they're heels at this point for the duration of their run in Impact Wrestling so far. They were baby faces, but I guess aligning yourself with the villainous invading champion from another company and the executive vice president that is now a heel. He's established as a heel in AEW and I think even on Impact Wrestling on his own broadcast. I would assume that the Good Brothers are heels now, considering they're also feuding with a babyface tag team in the Motor City Machine Guns. The question now is, when do the Good Brothers head to AEW? Because it's been widely reported for a long time that as part of this AEW and Impact Wrestling crossover, as part of having Kenny Omega appearing on Impact Wrestling, as part of having Tony Khan and Tony Schiavone appear on Impact Wrestling, that we were going to have the Good Brothers appear in AEW, specifically to have a match against the current AEW World Tag Team Champions, the Young Bucks. So it feels inevitable at this point that the Good Brothers, Kyle Anderson and Doc Gallows, eventually will end up in AEW or on an episode of Dynamite or on an AEW special or a pay-per-view. I think the best time for that to happen surely would be tonight. It's the first episode of Dynamite in 2021. It's the New Year's Smash event, night one of the New Year's Smash event. We'll be doing a preview about that on the channel later on, so be sure to check that out. But if Kenny Omega is going to be appearing there tonight, which we know he will, he's going to be defending the AEW World Championship against Rey Fenix in the main event. What better way to really put a stamp on that and really get people's attention on the first episode of Dynamite on TNT in 2021 and also get some buzz for next week's episode of Impact Wrestling on AXS TV, then have the Good Brothers, the Impact World Tag Team Champions, appear on tonight's show. I would assume, since Kenny Omega is going to be wrestling, since of course Jon Moxley's going to be there, Jon Moxley's going to be there, and Don Callis is going to be there as well, I would assume, to me, it makes total sense for Kenny Omega to defeat Rey Fenix tonight, because unfortunately Rey Fenix isn't going to win the AEW World Championship, because that would kind of put the end to this whole Impact Wrestling angle. I would assume Kenny Omega wins, maybe Jon Moxley comes out, Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley have a brief brawl, then wouldn't you know who comes out then? The Good Brothers, as they back up Kenny Omega and they then attack Jon Moxley, and then standing tall to end the show tonight on Dynamite on the New Year's Smash edition, we have the original Biz Clears in having Kenny Omega with the Good Brothers and Don Callis. That's how I would see Dynamite ending tonight, so I would assume that maybe the Impact World Tag Team Champions are going to be on AEW Dynamite tonight. As far as the Hard to Kill outcome, as I mentioned previously, I think that the Good Brothers and Kenny Omega are going to win because they have to. They have to. It kind of dampens any future Kenny Omega appearances and matches in Impact Wrestling. If the first match he has, it's a loss. So for the sake of continuing the storyline, and for the sake of building up this dominant faction, this reuniting of the former Bullet Club from New Japan, Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers have to win. They have to win at Hard to Kill. And we know that Kenny Omega is going to have future matches in Impact Wrestling. He really heavily attacked Rich Swann, the Impact World Champion, during this attack. He called himself the Collector and a collector of championships. And as I've mentioned several times, I think he's going to have that future Impact World Championship opportunity. The amount of teases and subtle teases they've done about Kenny Omega trying to go after the Impact World Championship, it just feels inevitable at this point that at the very, very least, he's going to get an Impact World Championship match. Is he going to get an Impact World Championship run? It's something I've predicted for a while. It's something I've definitely predicted for 2021. I'll stick by my predictions. I'm not always right, but it's always fun to have an opinion and predict these things. I think Kenny Omega will become the Impact World Champion in 2021. A question then becomes, where does Moose fit into all of this? Because we've been told and conditioned as a fan watching Impact Wrestling throughout 2020 that Moose is going to get an Impact World Championship opportunity. It was heavily teased coming out of Bound for Glory where Moose defeated EC3. He's confronted current Impact World Champion Rich Swann on a variety of occasions, whether it's Final Resolution or the episode of Impact after Bound for Glory. He's currently feuding with Rich Swann's best friend Willie Mack. They're having an I Quit match at Genesis on Saturday. So Moose is still in that World Championship picture. It's just a case of trying to figure out when and where he's going to have that match, and ultimately who's it going to be against, because if Kenny Omega becomes the Impact World Champion, does he face Moose in a match? That would certainly be interesting, and a match we wouldn't expect to happen. But as I mentioned, I think Kenny Omega will become the World Champion in Impact Wrestling in 2021. What will happen next week? I would assume I would probably think they would probably do some kind of a screwy finish when it comes to Rich Swann and Kyle Anderson next week, because do you really want to have the world champion getting pinned unless it's some form of interference by Kenny Omega and Doc Gallows? But then, of course, they've been banned from ringside. What about Don Callis? I suppose technically he's not a tag team partner of Kenny Omega and he's technically not a tag team partner of Kyle Anderson at Hard to Kill. He's not Doc Gallows or Kenny Omega. So maybe Don Callis could get involved next week trying to get around the issues. Plus, I guess Don Callis, he's the Impact Executive Vice President. He makes the rules. He can do what he wants. So maybe that could happen next week. That's how they could have Kyle Anderson win. Or maybe they'll just do a screwy finish. Who knows? But obviously, I think at this point, they're limited with what they can shoot, obviously, because they can only do stuff outside and by Kenny Omega's schedule. I think when it comes to the Good Brothers coming out of this feud as well, obviously, as I mentioned, they're likely to be facing the Young Bucks on AEW TV, or at least an AEW pay-per-view very soon. I think on the Impact side of things, when it comes to the Impact World Tag Team Championships, I think eventually we'll get the Motor City Machine Guns versus the Good Brothers for the tag team titles. The main event, essentially, at Hard to Kill, I think coming out of the pay-per-view will split in the sense that I think Kenny Omega will go over here and face Rich Swann, and then I think the Good Brothers will go over here and face the Motor City Machine Guns. I think that's how they'll continue it. So we're going to get title matches on both sides of this main event in the future. When does the Good Brothers versus the Young Bucks happen? Again, that's a tough one. I'm not too sure. I would think that AEW Revolution is in February. There's been some reports that AEW is actually moving out of Daily's place for a variety of reasons in the next few weeks. Purely maybe because of the weather. It's very, very cold there, and there have been some complaints about wrestling in the sub-zero temperatures. But also just a change of scenery might raise morale and get people more interested. So that's going to be Miami. I think Miami's going to be the location of AEW Revolution in February. That could absolutely be where the Good Brothers versus the Young Bucks happen. Maybe it's for the AEW World Tag Team Championships, maybe it's for the Impact World Tag Team Championships, maybe it's for both. There's a lot of potential here. So maybe even the Good Brothers could come over with the Motor City Machine Guns. Maybe they make it a three-way match, a triple threat tag team match, and the Good Brothers versus the Young Bucks versus the Motor City Machine Guns. The Motor City Machine Guns have a ton of history with the Young Bucks when they were Generation Me back in the day in TNA wrestling back in 2010. So there's absolutely a possibility that maybe the Motor City Machine Guns could come over. Either way, there is so much possibility and so much excitement here. As I mentioned, momentum has been lost slightly, but I expect it to build up. I expect to be a ton of momentum actually coming out of tonight's New Year's Smash edition of Dynamite, because I think we're going to see definitely some Impact interference at some point, and I think potentially tonight could be the night when it comes to the Good Brothers. So that's going to be very, very interesting. But of course, as I mentioned before, it was only meant to be a one-off, right? Remember that report? That came from Nick Houseman in Wrestling Inc. way back when we first had the Kenny Omega winning the world title on the Winter is Coming edition of Dynamite. We had that report that came out, exclusive news, that said, don't get your hopes up, fans. It's going to be a one-off. They're not going to be that intertwined. We're just going to have Kenny Omega appearing on Impact as a one-off to his friend Don Callis. The Good Brothers are going to go the only way, but don't get your hopes up. There's not going to be that much crossover. Don't worry about that. Well, since that report came out, Kenny Omega has essentially been on every episode of Impact Wrestling on AXS TV. He's going to have a main event match at Hard to Kill. He's scheduled to have future matches on Impact Wrestling pay-per-views, and likely we're going to see the Good Brothers on AEW television very, very soon. I think that's the definition of way, way more than a one-off. And it certainly is intertwined. The report obviously just wasn't accurate, and it's not to criticize that, but you know, I suppose we have to be careful where we get our information from and just wait to see how things play out. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers attacking Rich Swann and the Motor City Machine Guns last night on Impact Wrestling on AXS TV? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So get involved with the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. It really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.